You've probably seen the trailers or gameplay for this massively anticipated sequel to 2022's Final Fantasy VII Remake. Rebirth is the second title of the planned trilogy of games remaking the original 1997's Final Fantasy VII, which is regarded as one of the best RPGs of all time. You may have even played the PlayStation demo to get a taste of the story and combat, but even with all of this factored in, you're probably not prepared for the journey ahead of you with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Thanks to Square Enix, we were able to play the game in advance to bring you this review, and let me personally tell you, after a combined total of over 200 hours between myself, Paradise, and 269, we don't think people are ready for how absolutely massive and spectacular this game actually is. It is substantially expanding on the experience of the first remake, both in scope and duration. It takes the amazing story of the original game, the awesome remade combat from the first Final Fantasy VII Remake, and combines it all together with most, if not all, of the things that we wished were in that first remake. So, with over 200 hours of combined playtime, many but not all of the game's numerous quests, tasks, jobs, minigames, and challenges completed, we have been hooked since the beginning. Now, I will caveat this and say we are both massive Final Fantasy fans, with Final Fantasy X being my personal favourite and 7 or 8 being 2 6s, so we are aware of our own bias. However, we also feel like we can take a step back and have an objective look at this game for its various systems, features, story, its duration, and the game as an overall product, and we still feel the same way about this title, especially when comparing it to recently released RPGs. So I am going to try my best and not spoil anything for you guys. There will be no mention of story details, plot lines, or character specifics, and in the video itself there will only be very early gameplay footage or official trailers that have already been released, so don't worry about seeing any spoilers that aren't already out there. Now let's go through the game as a whole and what you can expect from it, because our expectations were way off with what we thought the game would be and what we actually got to experience, and we mean this in a good way. You start the game off by continuing the story where Final Fantasy VII Remake left off. There's also a prelude which is playable in the demo and really sets the scene and emotion of the story with Cloud, Sephiroth, and their history. But before you know it, you'll start your journey into the first semi-open world zone, and this is one of the major improvements to the previous remake. These open world zones are very sizable with a good amount of space to explore, battle, and collect stuff in. It gives you the freedom to explore at your own pace, discover new materials, monsters, cache locations with goodies, and eventually the world intel that brings a massive amount of things to do that are also fun and engaging side tasks where you kind of just get lost out in the world. A lot of other games have open world objectives and they usually end up being barren, boring, and even repetitive, but I feel like Rebirth did it correct. Each thing is rewarding in its own way and unlocks further tasks to complete, leading to boss fights, unique crafting accessories, and even expanded stories for side characters. And that is just the beginning, because there is essentially 6 of these large open world zones with loads of challenges, minigames, different methods of transport, and chocobo breeds along the way. We won't show or say what these different things are, but let's just say some of them are really cool that you unlock later on, and it really mixes up traversal and exploring. If you're someone who enjoys doing collectible tasks and side content, ticking off the map as you go, this is going to be an ideal experience for you, as you will invest tons of extra hours into the game, making the game's already pretty expansive story even longer. If you're like me though, and you enjoy playing through the main story of the game while leaving behind most side objectives, then you will probably find that Rebirth is unlike other games because it draws you in to do these side objectives and leads you to discover more fun and new fresh things to do, whereas the novelty of exploration and doing side tasks in other games often falls off very quickly. You see, Rebirth continues to give you that feeling of discovery as you go, giving you a feeling of wanting to do these tasks and find out what the next new thing is. Overall, the story consists of 14 chapters, and each chapter, excluding the side content, is anywhere from 3 to 8 hours long, giving an estimated story duration of around 40 to 50 hours, depending on how fast you clear the content, and that is if you skip literally everything else. The massive amount of side content in the game is not only high quality and fun to do, but the sheer amount of it easily adds another 50 or 60 hours of content playtime, leading to a total of over 100 hours, and from our own playtime, we haven't even experienced absolutely everything. The thing is, the side quests themselves actually feel like quality content, with high production value across the board for the actual quests, leading them to feel more like main missions than generic filler content, which is what you usually get in games for these side quests. The combination of the story, combat, minigames, and challenges makes Rebirth feel like it takes elements from all of our favorite games and mixes them together into one package. There are entire minigames that feel like this game's equivalent to card games such as Gwent, with different strategies, cards, and decks to try out, other minigames reminiscent of things like Star Fox 64, and even Mario Kart, which could basically be its own game entirely, with different power-ups, tracks, difficulty ranks, and so on. So all in all, the actual content of this game is insane and way beyond what we were expecting. On top of this, throughout the main story and the side quests, they've actually expanded on the game's lore and characters even more than in already existing media for the Final Fantasy VII universe, at least from my own research. There is some extremely cool stuff that people have been wanting to know about different characters or races, and it's so cool getting that juicy knowledge. We think die-hard fans of the series will absolutely love this. This, coupled with the scope of the open world zones and their content, lends to this game being a massive adventure where you feel like there is always things to do, improve, and experience right up until the very end, and then even beyond with the various endgame features that unlock post-campaign. One thing we really liked is how everything in the world interconnects at the end, which is just crazy and will let you discover and experience that for yourself. The combat feels really good, similar to the first remake, but with some awesome new mechanics and moves like synergy attacks, abilities, limit breaks, and of course summons, which we won't say anything more on other than that they did my favorite summon justice in this title. Another major point of the original story is the journey with the characters and Cloud's relationship with them, leading to different cutscenes and moments. We can say this is present and very fleshed out, with a couple iconic moments in a few chapters, having alternate cutscenes across almost all party members, lending very well to replayability and to your own preference of which party members you want to get closer with. Now let's talk about the graphics and the platforms. The game is of course out on PlayStation 5, and while it is not confirmed for other platforms, with Remake Intergrade being available now on PC, it looks like there's a possibility that this could be released on PC at a later date. For the graphics, there is a toggle for performance or graphical mode, with performance focusing on maintaining 60 FPS, while the graphics mode will play the game in 4K at a lower FPS. We've tried both of these modes, and while people online have been having some blurring issues, we personally haven't experienced this ourselves on either of them, and we found that both are playable, although performance was my preference. We advise you try both of these modes out early on to see what works for you. Overall, the graphics are very impressive, with some areas and cutscenes looking absolutely amazing. However, there are some odd moments with specific in-engine cutscenes zooming into objects that have, well, just bad textures. This gives it an oddly disjointed experience to the overall good graphics of the game, causing some of these moments where they zoom into a wall, a vehicle, or an object to just kind of look bad and a bit silly. In some scenes, the lighting is off, as has been seen by some people commenting about this in the demo, and it isn't perfect all of the time. But the complete experience is still a visually pleasant game, with some immersion-breaking moments due to bad textures or lighting. Now, while we are very pleased overall with the experience of the game, that's not to say there aren't some things we have gripes with. The input and controls on some minigames might leave you frustrated, as sometimes the AI just straight up won't let you win, or there's a delay on the input and this can cause you to lose. So you may end up having to do some minigames over and over again until the game lets you win. The pacing of unlocking new abilities and materia is good overall, although more variety and combinations would have been nice, especially if you played the first remake extensively. You'll find yourself reusing certain combos that you know work. There are some additional ones, but you have to wait to unlock them. Another thing people might have a gripe with is the bond with your party members. You have a rough estimate of how this is increasing based on a smiley face indicator that fills in, but you can max this out for everyone, and you don't really get a choice or a say in who you experience certain cutscenes with first, because you can't see all of the specifics until after the story is finished. Finally, while there is a good variety of weapons, most of them are pretty linear to unlock, making them more of an expected bonus as you play, rather than cool things that you find by doing side content. Overall, considering how massive this game is, how much side content there is to experience, how fun and engaging the story is, and the overall content, we feel that Rebirth solidifies itself as a masterpiece of a game. For us, this is a current top contender for Game of the Year, but with the year only just kicking off and games like Dragon's Dogma 2, Elden Ring DLC, and more on the horizon, we will have to wait and see. But for now, we can wholeheartedly recommend Final Fantasy VII Rebirth if you are looking for one hell of a solid RPG.